Thanks, Mike. Well, obviously that was a little different than Saturday, and I think everybody knew that, at least on our team, that tempo was going to be a little bit different today, and that it was not going to be easy. You just can't, you can't dictate how you want the other team to play. And I thought Quinnipiac did a great job of, controlling their part of the tempo and not letting us get too many runouts. But in the end, I think we had these two up here, especially Kia and Fisa. We were just too much for them at the right time. And a game like that, I think, is the perfect kind of game to have before you go out to the regionals.
Okay, again, well, questions for the student athletes. Jeff from our office has the microphone. We'll go Pat and Vicky to start.
Pat Eatonrod from the Associated Press. For both of you, after playing a team that wanted to run with you and then playing a team that wanted to slow you down, what does it say about this team to be able to succeed under both circumstances, and how do you think that prepares you going forward?
Well, obviously, we had an idea that the game plan for them and their execution of it would be a little bit different than what we saw on Saturday. But it's a matter of each and every game trying to make adjustments and understanding how the defense is playing us, whether they're giving us certain reads, which offenses are most effective against it, and then trying to adjust to that. I think if you get a game like that at this point, and you have games that continue to be different, it helps us to prepare for what's coming next.
I think Kia and Coach both said it. I think it was good for us to have one of each this weekend, so we can prepare, as much as we can for now the next round that we're going to.
Vicky?
Yeah, it was a pretty frenetic game, a pretty tough defense and everything like that. You seemed especially calm tonight. Just like one time, a defender came flying at you, and you just waited for her to go by and hit a nice little bank shot. Were you? Is that your job, I guess, to kind of stay calm when everything's going crazy?
I would say to a certain extent, yes. Definitely was a grind today, and they did a great job on a number of things throughout the game against us. But I think for a team like us, we have to try to remain calm as much as possible throughout whatever the situation is. And as an older person on the team with a lot of experience, that's definitely one of the things that I've worked on throughout my 4 years. Wouldn't say it was always there, but working on it.
Roger, and then Pat.
Kia, how much of a luxury or a good feeling is it to have somebody like Fisa inside who can really dominate a game and turn things around when you need her to?
I mean, it's a huge luxury for us. Fisa does a great job of getting inside position on her defenders. She catches anything that you throw at her, whether it be a good pass or a bad pass, and she does a great job of finishing. And then I think today she also did a great job of coming out, stepping out behind the three-point line and making plays from there, making plays for her teammates and making plays for herself. So when you have someone like that who you absolutely trust in putting her in positions where she'll be completely successful, that's a great thing to have on our side.
Pat?
Kia, yesterday you said you were going to try to keep your emotions under control in your last game at Gamble. I think you're 79-0 in Connecticut, 34-0 at Gamble. Can you just reflect on what it's meant to be undefeated in Connecticut and what it was like walking first onto the court to that huge ovation and then off the court to that huge ovation? I
mean, Gamble Pavilion and the XL Center are two of the greatest places in the country to call home. And it's a matter of the fans and our fan base that comes out each and every game with the same passion and the same energy, who is always behind us to be that sixth man for us, but also just the feeling of being in a place that has so much history, of so many great players who have come before to build this place into the legacy that it is, and just being fortunate every single home game to step on this court and try to make them proud. So it's been an incredible 4 years here. Glad we could end it the way that we did, and the ovation was absolutely incredible.
We have any other questions for the student athletes? No? Okay, thank you very much. You can return to the locker room. The Connecticut locker room remains open for a good another 20 minutes or so, and we'll take questions for head coach Oriama. Roger and Jim can start.
You know, the last couple of games, FISA's really kind of returned to that All-America form from last year. Can you just talk about how big it is to have her playing well in the tournament?
Yeah. As Kia said, you know, we're fortunate that you know, FISA's able to impact the game in a way that it doesn't matter what the other team is doing. She rarely is going to be out of position in the post. She's rarely able to, or you're rarely able to keep her from getting where she wants to go with the ball, and she's so comfortable with the ball on the perimeter that, and she's become a much better passer. And NCAA tournament time, you know, what happened Saturday, that's not really what happens in the tournament. Generally in the tournament, you know, you have to beat teams half court a lot of times. You know, teams pretty good transition defense. They don't turn it over a lot. So you got to be able to score in the half court offense, and that's why I think both FISA and Z had really good days today, because they're both really hard to guard. But FISA has a lot of different ways to score, and today was a perfect example of that.
Jim?
It was a stretch late in the first half. They hit a 3 to go down 8. They had a wide open 3 to go down 5. They missed. They had another 3 right after that, and they missed. You guys scored on both those possessions. How important was that stretch to kind of get you a little bit of breathing room?
Well, I mean, there was going to be a limited number of points scored today. Obviously, that was the way the game was going to be played, and they were going to get X number of open shots. And what we were trying to do is make sure that we didn't worry so much about how many shots they got, as opposed to, if we keep converting on the offensive end, they're going to have to speed up a little bit and try to catch up. But each possession for us offensively was important, especially that second quarter, because points were hard to come by for everybody. And I thought, you know, when you play in the NCAA tournament, you're shocked when an open 3 doesn't go in, because every time you make a mistake, some kid makes an open 3. You can put that in the bank. So when those 2 didn't go in, I was probably the most surprised person in the building. But this team has a knack of, you know, making shots when we have to, making a play when we have to. And we didn't get, like, great performances from a lot of players tonight. But that's going to happen as well. You know, and you have to be able to win, and no matter what the circumstances. A lot of good teams lost tonight. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. A lot of good teams got beat tonight.
A lot of teams slow it down against you, and then it comes down 5 seconds with a shot clock, and they have to act like their hair is on fire, and they have to try to force. This team seemed like, okay, we're going to run the clock down, we're going to start our offense with 8 seconds, and we're going to get the shot we want.
Right.
How impressed are you with how they ran their offense?
Well, I've always said that any kind of shot is better than a bad pass. So they weren't in a hurry, so they never really turned the ball over a lot. So they were able to get a shot. Now, sometimes it wasn't a great shot, but they were able to get a shot. And anytime you were able to get a shot, you get a chance to set up your defense. And, you know, I would have done the same thing if I was Trish. You know, I mean, we're either going to win 50-48 or we're going to lose 75-50. And that's a chance you take, because you know you're not going to score a lot of points. But you just want to get open shots. And to their credit, they did. They got a bunch.
Green chair.
Gino, right here. I think this is 25 straight years for the Sweet 16. What changes going into the next round now as you go to all neutral courts?
Well, I mean, you try to keep your approach consistent. You know, the fact that you almost never know who you're playing till tonight. You know, so all these days of practice leading up to it, you don't know what you're going to get. So you want to try to be ready for everything. But I think I've said this before. I mean, I think we've built the kind of program where getting to the regionals is kind of expected. You know, we have good enough players that you should be able to win 2 games in the NCAA tournament most years. And then after that, when you get to that second weekend, it's your team and it's 1 or 2 players on your team that make the difference. And if you have a couple of those players, then you have a chance to move on to the third weekend. So whoever we play next weekend in that first game, hopefully we've seen enough that we'll be ready for no matter what they do. I always tell our players, what can they possibly do that we haven't seen? Because generally speaking, throughout the season, you've seen it all. I mean, up until Saturday. Now I've seen it all. But
In the back.
Gino, back here on the right.
yeah.
So I know you don't, know this Quinnipiac team that well, but they're returning 4 or 5 starters from tonight, and most people on their bench. Can you, what do you think about their future?
Well, they're what I'm talking about. You know, they've kind of established themselves in their league where I think they expect to be in this game every year. You know, that's the level that they're at, and to be able to be there last year and win, and then lose some players at graduation and have a younger team this year and still be able to be in that second game, that takes a long time to get to that point. And I would think that they're there. They feel that way. And if you look around the country, the mid-major programs are a lot better than people think. And they're one of the best. You know, women's basketball mid-majors don't get any respect. On the men's side, they do, but not on the women's side. So for this year to have what's happening in the mid-majors, I think that's like the best thing that's ever happened. I mean, I'm glad it didn't happen more. I think it happened just enough times.
Anybody else with a question for Coach? Vicky, and then back.
What did you think of the atmosphere tonight? Was it kind of neat to see, like, a couple times Quinnipiac scored and there's a big cheer because they had so many people too? Was it an interesting dynamic?
It was. I mean, generally, when you come here, it's pretty much a one-sided crowd, but they're accustomed to watching their team play. Quinnipiac fans, they have a great facility and they have a heck of a team, and they're proud of their team. And short drive up here from Hamden, and I wasn't surprised. I mean, we had 2,100 students show up, so that's pretty neat. And I thought our fans, gave Gabby and Kia a great send off, but. Yeah, there's been other times in the past when, the last game at Gamble hasn't been that exciting in terms of the crowd, People say I'm saving my money for the Final Four. Every time I hear that, I'm saving my money for the regionals.
One more question over here.
Gino, to elaborate what you were talking about the mid-majors, it looks like you're going to have Buffalo as one of the 4 teams in Albany next week. You think it's really good for the game to see some of the
absolutely.
Teams? Central Michigan too made a
absolutely, absolutely. Florida Gulf Coast is playing tonight, I think. I think they play Stanford tonight, so we'll see what happens in that game. But I think that's the best thing that could happen to our game. I think it would happen even more if they cut down the scholarships from 15 to 13. I think if we ever went to 13 scholarships, there'd be more good players playing at some of those mid-majors, which would make it even better. You know, there's a lot of good players playing high school girls basketball. There's a lot of good players playing in college, but because they're not all at the schools that are on TV all the time, people don't get a chance to see them. But I've seen a bunch of them, and this is going to keep happening. It really is. I mean, these mid-majors, I mean, you look at the way they play. You look how hard those kids play and how hard they compete. They're not playing to go to the WNBA. They're not playing, nobody's doing Trish any favors by going to Quinnipiac, like you feel at one of the big schools, like, yeah, if you recruit me really, really good, I'll do you a favor. I'll come to your school. I'll grace you with my presence. But they get kids that are like dying to play basketball, and they play that way. And I love watching those games. I root for them all the time. I really do. When I heard the two scores at Buffalo and Central Michigan, I just kind of shrugged and said, of course it's going to happen. And the great thing about it is a lot of these kids growing up today, they're like not intimidated by some of the bigger schools. They play against these kids during the summer. They watch them play. So they're not necessarily intimidated by them. They can't wait to compete against them. I love it. I hope it keeps happening, and I hope they get rewarded for it. Quinnipiac got rewarded. They were a 9 seed. That's pretty high, I think, for that league, right? That's a pretty high seed. They generally don't get that high a seed. They deserve it. They've earned it. And I hope more mid-majors get a high seed down the road.